When I was alive, Tina was tired of me and threw a divorce agreement at me to marry the man she loved. I died in a car accident on her wedding day, and after my death, she went mad. But then I came back to life. Tina promised me. I didn't get together with him. I'll show you my call records. I'll give you my Instagram password. I'll give you the car records. I'll get you footage from my daily commutes. She pleaded wearily. Can we start over? I refused. When I loved her, she was tired of me. Now that she's offering her true feelings, I don't want them. Tina habitually leaned in for a goodbye kiss, and I dodged with a smile. Tina frowned and became cold. What more do you want? I've already apologized for Eric. I looked down and smiled faintly. I'm not making a scene. I just caught a cold and didn't want to pass it to you. Tina stared at me. Ben, if you're worried about betrayal, this isn't a good way to keep me. I looked up at her and laughed. All right, you should get to work. Eric's waiting for you. Tina's eyes darkened, and she stormed out, slamming the door. I still had a smile on my face as I turned to Wendy's room. I smiled gently at her and asked, Hungry? Want to go downstairs for some breakfast? Wendy turned her face from the window, her eyes dark and calm, but softened as she looked at me, nodding slightly. Okay. As Wendy and I headed downstairs, Tina called me again. Ben, it was wrong of me to come home late that day after drinking with Eric, but I swear, I just got drunk and nothing happened. This is the third time I'm apologizing. Stop making a fuss already. Got it. I handed Wendy a glass of milk, feeling nothing inside, even finding it all a bit funny. I knew nothing happened between them yet, but I also knew what would happen. Because I've died once already. This is my second life. In my last life, I watched Tina and Eric get closer and closer. I cried. I fought. I tried to stop it, but I was helpless. All I did was make Tina more tired, more annoyed, and more absent. Eventually, she handed me a divorce agreement right before her wedding to Eric. On their wedding day, I drove to see Tina, trying to get her to change her mind, but I got into an accident and used my last bit of strength in the ER to call her. But she didn't answer. It was Eric who picked up, with a victorious tone. Please stop bothering my wife. Keep your distance from married people. In despair, I dropped my phone, losing the will to live, and the doctors couldn't save me. As I closed my eyes for the last time, I felt pain and cold, lying alone in the hospital. My parents were abroad, and everyone else was at Tina's wedding. Doctors notified them one by one. Only Wendy, the neglected illegitimate daughter, got there to see me off. I remember her whispering in my ear, "Rest in peace. I'll turn the world upside down for you if I have to." I saw her face, handsome but full of rage. I couldn't thank her, and I closed my eyes, frustrated. My last wish before I passed was that, in another life, I'd never love Tina again. I didn't expect heaven would hear my wish and let me be reborn. When I opened my eyes again, it was last night. The first time Tina and I had a fight because of Eric. Tina and Eric went out to dinner after work, got terribly drunk, and returned home late, smelling of perfume. I yelled and cried, while Tina rubbed her forehead impatiently, saying she'd drunk too much and Eric took her to his place for a few hours to look after her. That's when I traveled back. Reviewing my past life, I was sure Tina and Eric hadn't been together yet at this point. I had a chance to save it, or stop it, but I just closed my mouth from questioning, wiped my tears, and quietly took my blanket to sleep in the guest room, ignoring Tina's knocking on the door. I remembered the vow I made in my last life. In another life, I'd never love Tina again. Let her and Eric go wherever they want. I'll even lend them a hand. This life is precious. It's something I traded my life for. I don't want to have a love-obsessed mind anymore. I want to live for myself and repay the person who saw me off. Wendy and I were having breakfast in the dining room. She lowered her head, showing her pale, slender neck, her raven-like lashes hiding her deep eyes. I couldn't see her expression. Since she was brought back home, she had been so silent and on the sidelines. Her family looked down on her origin, and almost nobody remembered her. I only sent her gifts on holidays and medicine when she got sick. It was a small gesture, worth her seeing me off. She had a little company thrown at her by the family, close to failure, a bit of inheritance. I remembered during this time she wasn't sleeping well, always waking up at night to drink water. Looking at her pale face and dark circles, I thought for a moment. You seem out of sorts. Is your company not doing well? Need any help? I could invest. My parents are overseas. I manage all the domestic businesses. In my last life, I graduated from a prestigious university but poured all my attention into Tina. Tina didn't like strong men, so I left the company for her to manage. I was willing to drive her to work, waiting for her to come home. But in the end, she got tired of me. She thought I was confined at home, narrow-minded, only focused on love. Eric, on the other hand, was different. He was on her level in the workplace, had different experiences, and was more appreciated by her. In this life, I'd rather die than stay stuck at home. I'm going back to my company. Wendy glanced at me and then looked down, saying, I just had a nightmare. You should focus on yourself. We've been married 3 years, and you haven't even checked on your properties, right? She insisted on calling me brother, a small stubbornness of hers. Even after marriage, she never stopped, which made Tina angry a few times. But Wendy couldn't change. I wiped my mouth. I'll reclaim my properties. If you need any investments, just come to me. It's my responsibility. Wendy gave me a deep look, then lowered her head to continue eating. She seemed to be considering something. After a while, she asked, Brother, can you rent me 2 floors of your office building? I'll pay the market price. She explained, the rent for my company is too high. I've been wanting to move. If I rent it to her, she'll be right below my company. It'll be easier for me to return the favor. So, I agreed without hesitation and called my company secretary to make the arrangements. Not 10 minutes later, Tina called. You're renting the office building to Wendy? I was trying on my old work clothes in front of the mirror and replied offhandedly. Yeah. Do you know about Wendy's background? Why are you even dealing with her? Tina was annoyed. You've been home too long. You don't understand people. My dad has so many illegitimate daughters, and she's the only one who squeezed into the Liu family. Her methods are beyond what you can imagine. She ordered me just stay at home. Don't get involved in business affairs. I chuckled, but it's my property. I added, it's a prenup asset. Tina hesitated, then asked softly, Are you still mad at me? No, I answered earnestly. Whatever happens between you and Eric, I won't be angry. I just want my properties back. You think I'm embezzling your money? Tina asked, her voice serious. You wouldn't. I shook my head. I'm not overthinking. I just want my properties back. It's as simple as that. In the past, she never took my properties, even after the divorce. Just the cheating and causing my car accident were enough for me to never forgive her. Tina's voice turned cold. Do what you want, but I'm pulling my people out. This was the first time I didn't follow her words, and this was her punishment for me. I nodded with a smile. Suit yourself. Tina, true to her word, had a third of her people leave in a matter of hours, leaving me with a lot to handle. But I wasn't worried. Once you've faced death, nothing is scarier than that. During the handover, people advised, the company is stable with Tina in charge. Just relax and wait for her to bring in money. I gestured for them to leave. I wish you success back at the Liu family. I remained unmoved, which bothered Tina. She called demanding I don't venture into areas beyond my capabilities. I looked at the company reports, jotting notes as I laughed. What about Eric? How come he's fit for the business battlefield? She blurted, he's naturally suited for hunting. I slowly reminded her. Eric and I were college classmates. I even did better than him. I'm the one who recommended him for his job. Tina probably didn't know that her perception of me wasn't the reality. I have an inner courage. Last time it was used to face death. This time it's for living. That night, Tina came home at 1 a.m, smelling of Eric's cologne and alcohol. I was studying reports under the lamp and casually said, Take a shower before bed. Tina furrowed her brows with a chill. Why aren't you kicking up a fuss today? I stretched, I don't have time. Besides, isn't entertaining clients a normal part of business? Tina stared at me like she wasn't used to this version of me. She seemed to wait for me to demand an explanation. Instead, I went to shower. She followed me to the bathroom door, watching my reflection in the mirror, and offered. I had dinner with a client, Eric got drunk, and I took him home. I gave her a thumbs up. Awesome. My wife's a stellar boss. Cheers to harmonious teamwork with your secretary. Harmonious teamwork. Speed up Eric's problems. By then, I'll have the company sorted and new hires in place. I can give her the management job and the divorce papers as a gift. Tina scolded, that's not how you use harmonious teamwork. She reached out to me. Ben, stop being so passive-aggressive, okay? I burst out laughing. Tina really didn't get it. I sidestepped her, grabbed my blanket. You sleep first. I'm still recovering from a cold. I'm sleeping next door. Tina's face darkened. She grabbed my arm and forced through her teeth. You think I'll never change, so you're acting this way? I raised an eyebrow at her, yeah. I loosened her grip and went to the guest room. I have no fear. My lack of fear comes from a heart that doesn't love anymore. Once your heart dies, there's nothing to fear. I heard Tina's footsteps, heavy and determined. Down the stairs, the door slamming, and the engine starting. Later, I saw Eric's tweet. No picture, just 2 words. Heartache. I smiled and commented, try looking into quick heart relief pills. He awkwardly replied with an emoji. I turned off Instagram, lit a cigarette, and watched the glow in the dark. Inside, something started to crack. Old wounds slowly started to surface. I sped up Tina's cheating schedule this time around. Though I hoped this time life would be different. Nothing changed. Still, she rushed to Eric right under my nose. The next morning, I arrived at the company with Wendy. The entire building belonged to my family. 2 floors were vacant, so I rented them to her. Tina didn't come home all night. At noon, she called, voice filled with anger. What's going on with you and Wendy? Ignoring me for her? Leaving an empty floor is just losing money. If Wendy offers the market rate, I'll rent it to her. What's the big deal? I said calmly, why do you care so much? Isn't she your sister? I told you she's got her own agenda. Stay away from her, Tina said coldly. Suddenly moving underneath you? She's up to something. Don't come crying to me when it all blows up. I gave a polite smile. Got it, thanks for the heads up. Anything else? Ben, why don't you ever listen to me? Tina's anger was barely contained. My patience is running thin. I glanced at Wendy, who was eavesdropping, and gestured for her to stay relaxed. I smiled back at Tina. Honey, real unreasonable would be like this. Where were you last night? Show me the dashcam footage? Print out your call logs? Give me your Instagram password? Tina went silent. After a moment, she sighed heavily and hung up. I let out a sigh too. Last time around, her tiny clues pushed me to the brink of madness. I once pressured her just like that. I can still remember the disgust in her eyes. She said Eric wouldn't check up on her like that. Said even if something happened with Eric, it was all because of me. Now, I don't check up on her at all, but she still doesn't seem too happy. Wendy, sitting across from me, took a sip of tea. You're unhappy. I tried to smile, fighting, not really fun. Wendy lowered her gaze, hiding her expression. She said, I have my own agenda with you. I shrugged it off and asked with a light-hearted smile. Do you? Wendy suddenly looked up. Those dark eyes reflecting me, yes. I was totally unguarded. Chuckling, what are you after? Tell me, I'll hand it over. I hold grudges, but I treasure kindness even more. Last time around, her kindness needed repaying. Wendy just sipped her tea and didn't answer. But the corners of her mouth quirked up in a gentle curve. The next few days, I was so busy running around like a headless chicken. I wouldn't get home until 10-ish. But Tina was coming home even later than me. I couldn't be bothered with her. I'd just clean up and lock myself in the guest room to sleep. Sometimes I wondered if last time I hadn't thrown the company to Tina, maybe I wouldn't have ended up so bad. When you're working insanely hard like this, there's no time or energy for drama. Wendy wasted no time moving her company downstairs. Sometimes we'd go to or leave work together. I hadn't been in the business world for a while, still slowly adjusting. Occasionally, Wendy would invite me to lunch, offering guidance. At first, I didn't think much of it. She was young, couldn't have much more experience than me. But eventually, I was speechless with amazement. She was like half a teacher to me. She solved so many tough problems for me, no less competent than Tina. Puzzled, I asked, "How do you know so much?" Wendy smiled over her tea. After a while, she replied, looking out the window, "I eavesdropped while Dad was teaching Tina." She asked me lightly, "Do you think Tina was right, that I'm calculating?" I focused on my food. "Doesn't bother me. You'd never hurt me." Wendy hesitated. "So sure?" I nodded. The one who pushed me to the edge was my own wife. She was the one who vowed revenge for me. I trust my gut. Wendy seemed pleased, smiling so brightly it dazzled me. I had never seen her smile before, never knew her smile was so radiant. She started dropping by upstairs more often, guiding me with paperwork. She wasn't hiding anything from me anymore, taking business calls, dealing with work right in front of me. That's when I learned the struggling little company we'd left in her hands was thriving. It had even become a force to be reckoned with in the market. The humble office setting was just a facade. I started to understand what Tina meant by calculating. But I didn't care. My instincts always told me. Wendy's curious looks my way were odd, but she'd never harm me. Tina and I were still sleeping in separate rooms. She came home late, often with a trace of perfume. Sometimes she'd sneak off to take a call, but when she realized I didn't care, she just started answering Eric's calls right in front of me. Some calls were work-related, some concerned her well-being, and he even occasionally inquired about me. I heard it all, yet felt nothing. It was all just noise. Later, when Tina answered calls, I'd leave with my laptop, grinning warmly. "Go ahead. I won't interrupt." I'd go to the guest room and hear a loud crash from our bedroom, not knowing what she knocked over. I ignored it, falling into a deep sleep. That night, Tina sat alone in the dining room, drinking. She drank a lot, stumbling up to knock on my door. I didn't open it, so she kept knocking stubbornly. I said, exasperated, "I'm sleeping. I've got stuff to do in the morning." In a raspy voice, she said, "Nothing happened with Eric. I was just trying to get a rise out of you. I swear." Frustrated, she said, "It's because you don't care. You're not even bothered to fight or argue." "Why?" I chuckled, "Because I trust you. Can I go back to sleep now?" Tina seemed really pained. "I'm your wife. I should be sleeping beside you. I've got a cold." "You've had a cold for 2 months." Tina suddenly burst out in anger. "I'll show you my call logs, my Instagram password, my car's dashcam, even surveillance footage from Eric's place." She sounded exhausted. "Can I come in?" I didn't open the door. When I demanded it, she was irritated. Now she offered it willingly, but I no longer wanted it. Tina slept at my doorstep all night. The next morning, her eyes were bloodshot, watching me closely, not missing a single expression. "Do you not love me anymore?" she asked. I smiled, touching her face. "Don't overthink it. I just have a cold. In a past life, I might have been moved, maybe held her and cried. But in this life, I watched her quietly as she slammed the door and left. Dying once does make a person colder." Tina didn't come home for several days. Eric called, lecturing me. "What's up with you and Tina? She's been really down, calling me to drink with her late at night." "Call her boss if you want to," I replied, glancing at the files on my computer and asking him a few business questions. "Eric's good at what he does, so why not make use of him?" Eric seemed confused by my questions, but once he caught on, he was in disbelief. "You'd rather worry about your company than care if Tina's not coming home?" He hinted. "She's always coming to me, complaining you're clueless." "Aren't you afraid you'll get replaced? Like by you mean?" I said, still focused on my screen. Eric paused. "I just don't want to see Tina suffer. I want to comfort her." I laughed and threw his words from a past life back at him. "Please don't bother my wife. Keep your distance from married folks." Eric was stunned for a moment, then hung up without saying anything. I stared blankly at my computer for a while. Even in a new life, Eric's meddling still got to me. The cracks in my heart started aching again. Turns out, In a new life, you can still remember the pain from the last one. In my most painful moment, Tina called, "Did Eric say you misunderstood him and yelled at him?" I nodded, waiting for Tina to blow up. In the last life, she went ballistic after I shouted at Eric, calling me ignorant and crude. But now, Tina was smiling. "Ben, you still care about me, right?" She laughed, feeling pleased. "No rebuttal means you agree," she said. I nodded, "Yeah, sure." The company was pretty much in order now. I found some reliable people through my parents, and Wendy lent me a few strong leaders. With the company sorted, some things needed to be said. As I was packing up for the day, ready to head to the restaurant Tina booked, Wendy came upstairs. Tina's downstairs with a ton of roses, and she switched to a sports car. "I know. We're having dinner tonight." Wendy looked down, hiding her expression. "Made up?" "No, just something to talk about." Wendy shook her head, her hands in her pockets, her eyes dark. "Do you still have feelings for Tina?" she asked. "What, you need relationship advice?" I joked. Wendy smiled, a mysterious smile. If one day I go up against Tina, will you hold it against me?" I had some idea of what she meant. Wendy's moves in the capital market always circled back to Tina. When she talked about Tina, she was colder, without any affection, and she didn't bother to hide it. Predators will hunt eventually. I put a finger to my lips. "Don't tell anyone else. I'll pretend I didn't hear." As I turned, Wendy's quiet voice reached me. "You'll never guess why I'm against her. I have good hearing." I heard it. I turned, puzzled. "Why?" Wendy smiled at me. "What if I said it's because of a nightmare? Would you believe it?" It was an absurd excuse, but I nodded. Sure, I'd believe it. Because in her eyes, aside from my reflection, I saw her fear and anxiety. It must have been one hell of a nightmare. When I got downstairs, Tina was standing by her car, holding those massive roses, catching everyone's eyes. People looked at me enviously. I just thought it was too much. When she first pursued me, she was sincere, passionate, putting her heart into it. Everyone said I'd be happy. I thought I would be too. But then she cheated on me, and I died. All past sentiments drifted away like smoke. I took the flowers and tossed them in the car. "No need for all this, we're just going to talk." She tried to put her arm around me. I dodged and got into the car. I saw the disappointment on her face, but I ignored it. In the restaurant, Tina ordered a table full of my favorite dishes. I was silent. In a past life, I tried to win her back by bringing her here. Same spot. She mindlessly ordered everything Eric liked. I remember the pain, the arguing. She denied it. She forgot I knew Eric from college. For 4 years, I knew his likes better than she did. After we fought, Eric got sick. Now, sitting in that familiar spot, faced with food catered to me, I couldn't eat. The pain lingered, a reminder of the naive boy in my past self, crying within me. Tina sighed. "It seems like it's been forever since we've done this." I nodded. "Since you met Eric." A flash of guilt crossed her face. "There was some initial appreciation, but it was to get your attention over time," Tina said, reaching for my hand. The warmth was familiar, but I'd changed. I pulled my hand away, sighing. "I wish you'd said that in a past life." "What?" Tina looked confused. Sitting up straight, I said, "Never mind. I came to talk about something today." She cut in. "Ben, I want to win you back." I interrupted, "But I want a divorce." Tina was stunned, like she didn't hear me. She laughed. "What did you say?" I said, "I want a divorce." Leaning in, "Tina, I want a divorce." Tina leaned back, as if trying to escape. I leaned forward. "Tina, there's no point in continuing. I've drafted the divorce agreement. If you want, I can return whoever you've placed in my company." Tina frowned, took a deep breath, and her brow furrowed slightly. "Why? Is it because of Eric?" I hesitated for a moment. You could say that's not entirely wrong. After all, in my past life, Eric's illness led to my divorce and a car accident. Seeing my hesitation, Tina slammed the table hard and yelled, "I swear I didn't touch him. I just wanted you to make a scene. I'm really confused. But don't you dislike it when I act out? In my past life, was she suffering from a split personality? Or did she mutate in this life? I don't like when you're hysterical, but you can't be completely indifferent. Tina seemed hurt. I was taken aback, thought for a moment, and then realized something. No, it's not about Eric. From the beginning, it was always about you, Tina. Just you. I pulled out the divorce agreement, which was identical to the one in my previous life, and handed it to Tina. Take a look. I've considered both of our interests. We can discuss if you have any objections. Those were also her words to me in my last life. Tina took the divorce agreement, glanced at it briefly, then sneered. Seems like you've been planning this for a while. Very thorough. I closed my eyes. If this divorce agreement was a result of long-term scheming, then it was her plan in the last life. She looked at me with a mocking smile. I don't understand why you want a divorce. But Ben, it's not possible. She slowly tore the agreement into pieces beyond repair, scattered them on the table, and smiled at me. It's not possible, Ben. Before we got married, we promised each other never to mention divorce. Did you forget? You forgot first. I also put on a cold face and stood up. Even if a contract gets torn, it can still be rewritten. Tina, it's useless. Tina stood up. Let's go. We're going home. She never mentioned the agreement again, like it never happened. All the way home, she kept talking about things I might be interested in, like luxury goods, clothes, bags, jewelry, and fashion shows. But now, I'm only interested in my company. I don't know much about the things she mentioned. We talked past each other all the way until we got home. Tina watched as I went to sleep in the guest room, said nothing, and just sighed imperceptibly. Hope your cold gets better soon. After that day, Tina started to change. She came back at 8 every day, always with a gift. I sometimes worked late, and she would quietly wait at home. As soon as I got back, she'd hand me a gift. If I didn't take it, she'd insist. She laughed bitterly. I didn't know waiting for someone to come home was so hard. I'll cut down on unnecessary socializing. I lowered my head. There was a time when sleepless nights wore me out. Tina asked me, when was that? I smiled at her. In a past life. Tina thought I was joking. She handed me the gift with a humble plea in her eyes. Ben, when will your cold get better? I put the gift on the couch and looked at her sincerely. Never in this lifetime. Tina's eyes dimmed, yet she forced a smile. I don't believe it. I'll wait for you. I said nothing and went into the guest room. A few days later, Tina told me about an important party where she needed a +1 and asked me to come along. I thought she should bring Eric, but Tina said it wouldn't look right for her to bring a secretary when others were bringing their husbands. I run my own company now and know the importance of networking. I wanted to make connections at the party, so I agreed to go. At the party, when Tina looked at me, she seemed mesmerized. You look really handsome. I smiled but didn't comment. Once, I spent a ton of time on my appearance, but Tina didn't care. Tonight, I'm just wearing a suit. Not nearly as polished as before. But still, she's captivated. People are really strange and confusing creatures. Wendy was also at the party. She raised a glass to me, her deep eyes revealing nothing. She didn't have a date with her. I suspected Tina lied, that I wasn't needed there, because even Eric came alone. Seeing Tina on my arm, Eric's gaze dimmed, but he came over with a smile. Tina, Ben looks commanding tonight. He bit his lip, looking pitiful yet slightly holding back. Tina gave him a look and then quickly turned away. Yes, he's quite commanding. Eric forced a weak smile. It's good to see Tina and Ben reconciled. Truly, congratulations. He looked at me. Whenever Tina got drunk, she'd come to my place and talk about you into the late night. We're not reconciled. I cut him off. Eric blinked, a spark of light in his eyes, then gone. I smiled and repeated, we're not reconciled. I'm here on business. Don't worry. I thought Eric would be visibly happy, but he seemed regretful and angry. Ben, aren't you being too cruel to Tina? It's hard even for me to watch. Tina loves you so much, yet you treat her love like trash. Have you thought about her dignity? His righteous words amused me. I shrugged. Why don't you think about it so I don't have to? You're so unappreciative. Eric got mad. So many people love Tina, but you take her for granted. You're ungrateful. I turned to Tina. Does your secretary have the right to talk to me like this? Eric looked at her too, eyes filled with pity and affection. I felt like, if I were a woman, I'd find it hard to resist. Eric should be an actor. But Tina's face turned cold, scolding him. Why are you getting into my personal affairs? Understand your place, and stay out of things that don't concern you. Eric and I were both stunned. Tina looked at me again. If you don't like him, I can make him leave the company, even the city. You'll never have to see him again. Her eyes on me were filled with affection. When looking at Eric, just impatience. I should be happy, right? This would be a complete turning point for me, defeating my rival after being reborn. But I wasn't. Felt just as dull and pointless as in the past. The roles were just reversed, me and Eric. Whether she's fed up with me or Eric, it's the same. I couldn't feel happy. Instead, I was reminded more of the bitterness of being rejected in the past life. Eric ran away crying. Tina grabbed my arm tightly. Ben, will this make you get over your cold? I cast down my eyes. How could it? It's never going to happen in this life. Some things you just can't mend, like a life lost. I shook my head. No, it'll never get better, Tina. Stop hoping. Let's get a divorce. Tina was taken aback. Her face turned darker bit by bit. She pulled me into a corner. Ben, I even treated Eric like that, and you don't believe me? What do you want from me? She demanded. I pushed Tina away. The old wounds had piled up to this moment. The pain exploded. I don't want anything from you. Just a divorce. What you do with Eric is your business. I just want out. Get it? Tina yanked me back, grinding her teeth. Dream on. She suddenly leaned in, kissed me hard, and mumbled, Ben, you'll never get a divorce in this life. I felt a wave of nausea. Those lips had once kissed Eric too. Even in my past life, I couldn't forgive that. I'm petty like that. Without a second thought, I raised my hand and slapped Tina hard. The slap echoed sharp and loud, her face instantly swollen. I rubbed my lips vigorously, wishing I could scrub a layer of skin off. Stay away from me. Tina's face went pale then blue, finally, looking at me with icy indifference. She sneered, Good job, Ben. No one's ever hit me before. She backed away step by step, her eyes locked on me. You don't want me? I'll show you. I can have anyone in my bed if I choose. With that, she spun around, briskly walked toward Eric, hugged him, and left the ballroom. I stood there, stunned. People noticed the ruckus. Whispered gossip surrounded me. Some even approached to check on me, but I ignored them. Wendy pushed through the crowd, reached out her hand to me. Brother, let me take you home. I looked up at her through tear-filled eyes, seeing that familiar determined face, just like in the past life. Memories from past and present intertwined. I took her hand and stood, getting pulled into her embrace. Her voice was cold with barely contained anger. Don't worry, even if I have to tear Tina's family apart, I'll avenge you. My body shook. Was it just coincidence? Why were her words exactly the same as before? I wanted to ask her, but my voice wouldn't come out, so I let her take me home, held in her arms, soothing me like a child. I'll make them pay. I'll get revenge. It's okay. I was exhausted. The weight of 2 lifetimes was too much. I curled up in her arms and fell asleep. In a haze, she helped me back to the guest room, tucked me in, and locked the door. My sleep was restless. In the middle of the night, knocking woke me. Tina was at my door, drunk and hysterical, yelling, Open up, Ben, open the door. I'm your wife, I want in. She screamed. I can't go through with things with Eric. My head's full of you. You abandoned me. Just open the door. Ben, I can't lose you. Once more, tears streamed down my face. Memories of lying alone in a hospital, waiting to die, overwhelmed me, crushing. I yanked the door open and slapped Tina hard. She was stunned. Before she could react, another slap followed. I was in tears. Tina, I lost a life for you. 1 entire life. Think that can ever be taken back. Choking with sobs. While I was cold and waiting to die in a hospital, you married Eric. I called. Begged for you to change your mind. You didn't even pick up. You cut off my last chance at life. I didn't die in a car crash. I died by your hands." Tina stood there, speechless, mouth opening and closing without words. I crouched, hands over my face. Once you cross a line, the outcome is set. No one can change it. Tina tried to reach for me. "Ben, I get it, you're having a breakdown, right? Are you imagining things about me and Eric? It's okay. Ben, I'll have a doctor check you out tomorrow. We'll see the doctor and it'll be fine." Before she finished, she suddenly collapsed right in front of me. Wendy was behind her, clapped her hands, looking blank. Too much talking. Let her sleep it off. Terrified, I reached a shaking hand to check Tina's breathing. Relieved, she was alive. Wendy kicked Tina aside, squatted down beside me. I noticed she was trembling, shaking hard, holding on to me as if she'd never let go. She refused to let me sleep back on the bed, just sat on the floor, pressing me into her embrace, silent, like someone who'd survived a disaster, with residual fear. I asked her multiple times to let go, but she seemed deaf to it, just held on to me. Until dawn, I couldn't stay awake anymore, and just as I was dozing off, I heard her hoarse voice, "That dream, it's real." In Wendy's arms, I managed only 2 hours of sleep. Once awake, the burden seemed lighter, as if that foolish boy from the past life had finally cried his tears dry and vanished from the world. With him gone, it felt time for me to leave too. I glanced at Wendy. She hadn't slept either, her clear eyes now streaked with red veins. Seeing me open my eyes, she held me tight, as if afraid I would disappear too. I gave her a weak smile and asked, "Can you help me move?" Wendy nodded, stood up, and together we stepped over the still unconscious Tina in the hallway and began packing. Within half an hour, I had moved back into my parents' empty house. Before leaving, I took a look at Tina's place, now cleared of any trace of me, let out a bitter laugh and turned to walk into the sunrise. Every day from here on was a clean slate. After I moved out, Tina immediately fired Eric and then tried her best to get back to me, even begged and pleaded. But she never pushed too hard. She thought I had a mental illness that provoking me would set it off. Apart from the divorce, she complied with everything else. If I got upset, she'd leave right away. Eventually, she had less time for love and relationships. Wendy launched her revenge against Tina, a plan long in the making, and with Wendy driven and Tina overwhelmed, Tina's family was in shambles. Nobody ever thought a girl who once seemed so insignificant would one day grow into a wolf, turning back to devour Tina's family for no apparent reason. The revenge lasted a year. Wendy became a rising star in business. Tina's family was gutted and couldn't recover. I was the one who told Wendy to stop. It wasn't for Tina's sake, but because Wendy started to worry me. Since that night when she held me, the anger in her eyes never faded. It only grew. Sometimes she would suddenly go quiet, then cling to me, forcing me to promise to live well. I started to think that maybe she's the one with mental issues, not me. I pushed her to stop exhausting herself, to take a break. Wendy refused. If I got angry, she couldn't take it. She believed my anger would lead to irreparable mistakes. I found it a little funny and couldn't figure out where she got that idea. In the end, Wendy agreed to stop and rest. This gave Tina a breather, and she came looking for me. She no longer had her past glow and appeared weary. Even though she never used to drink during the day, now there was a faint smell of alcohol in the afternoon. She chuckled sadly. "Since you left, I've been in pain every day. I haven't slept well in a long time." She sat in the chair, her eyes dark, like she hadn't slept for ages, and pleaded, "Ben, can I sleep here for a bit? I only sleep well where you are." I sighed and remained silent. Tina quickly fell asleep but didn't sleep peacefully. She seemed restless, her eyes moving underneath her eyelids, her brow deeply furrowed. After a while, she started talking in her sleep. "No, stop. Ben, stop." Then she screamed, "Ben, hold on. Cooperate with the doctors. I'll come save you." Her cries turned into sobs, something she never did before, and then from quiet tears to heart-wrenching sobs. Her emotions infected me. and scenes from our past life flashed uncontrollably through my mind, from meeting, to falling in love, to betrayal, then death. The foolish kid, is he doing okay now? Has he found peace in eternal rest? It seemed like ages passed. Tina woke from her dream, eyes red, tears on her face. She jumped up, threw herself at me, examining me closely before stretching out a hand to caress my face. "Ben, you're alive, thank goodness," she said, eyes red. "I dreamed I did something stupid that caused you to leave." Her voice was hoarse, tears rolling down her cheeks. The dream was terrifying. Then, Tina paused. Looking at me with disbelief, she asked, hesitantly, "I remember before you moved out, you said you lost your life for me, right, Ben?" Gripping my hand, "Did you say that? Or was I drunk and remember wrong? You said you were reborn once, right?" In our 2 lifetimes, I'd never seen Tina so cautious, choosing each word carefully. I even thought, if that foolish kid from the past life were here, would he forgive this worn-out woman? Unfortunately, I'm not him. I smiled at her with teary eyes. "What do you think?" Tina shook her head, wanting to laugh but couldn't. "I think it doesn't make scientific sense." I wiped away my tears, neither nodding nor shaking my head. "I can't say. What happened, happened. The pain was real. The life lost was lost. I can't deny it and I won't." Tina stood up suddenly, stumbled back, shaking her head constantly. "This isn't real. It's not scientific. It's just a dream." She forced a smile. "Ben, is your mental illness contagious?" I calmly told her, "Mental illness isn't contagious. I took out the divorce papers, Tina. I've died for you once. Isn't one life enough for you to let me go? Divorce is the only way for us." Tina desperately denied it. "No, this isn't possible. Your mental illness has infected me. I can't believe it." Staggering, she fled as if ghosts were chasing her. 3 days. Tina disappeared for 3 whole days. Her entire family couldn't find her. After 3 days, Tina showed up at my office. Her clothes were wrinkled, and she looked unrecognizable. Her voice was hoarse. "I've been dreaming for 3 days, both past and present." Tears filled her eyes. "I believe you, Ben." Tina reached out a hand. "Give me the divorce papers, I'll sign. I have no face left to try and get you back." I handed her the papers, and without looking, she signed her name. As she left, tears rolled down. "From now on, I will never marry again. I won't touch another man. Ben, it's my way to atone." Watching her weary silhouette, I felt a pang and yet a sense of relief. 2 lifetimes of marriage were finally over. I closed my eyes, exhausted but somehow drifted into sleep without understanding why. Maybe I was just too tired. I was in the same dreamscape as Tina, saw scenes from our past life playing out. It kept unfolding until I was in the hospital waiting to die, Wendy by my side for my final moments. I thought my dream would end there, like my life had. But no, the dream kept going. I saw Wendy holding my cold body, tears falling as the rage in her eyes grew stronger. Her chilly fingertips wiped the blood off my face, and she whispered gently in my ear, "Brother, wait for me to get revenge, and I'll tell you a secret." The tears hit my face, cold to the touch. Later, Wendy took revenge on Tina's family, bringing down a massive dynasty until it was worthless. Many ended up in jail and some even committed suicide. Yet Tina, the head of the family, couldn't care less. Even as her family crumbled around her, Tina was called crazy by everyone. She sought out mediums worldwide to bring back my spirit. She traveled all over, from Nepal to India, Thailand to Mexico, going anywhere she thought might help. After her family fell, she lost her wealth and worked odd jobs just to find me, searching for 5 long years. In the 5th year, someone told her I had returned to the past. So, she began searching for a way to go back in time. Another 5 years passed, aging her prematurely, her hair now white as snow. Wendy appeared before her and coldly said, "Even if you find him, would he still want to see you? You're the reason he's dead. Would you forgive your killer?" Tina was stunned. She sat frozen all night and gave up looking for me the next day. She became a drunk, drowning her sorrows, eventually falling sick and refusing treatment, letting go of life. As for Wendy, she buried me in a sea of flowers, visiting every day despite her busy life. Occasionally, she'd drink, and drunk she'd sit by my grave, shedding tears. Brother, do you know why I didn't kill Tina? 'Cause I wanted to find you too. Although I tried everything with no luck, I hoped Tina might succeed. At least Tina hadn't forgotten you, just like I hadn't. Maybe if more people think about you, you might return. She would talk to my tombstone. Brother, when everyone looked down on me, only you smiled, cared if I had a fever or was hungry, snuck gifts and fed me medicine. I said I'd tell you a secret. The secret is, the first time you smiled at me, I fell in love with you. No one's smile is as beautiful as yours. She stayed by my grave her entire life, never marrying. I woke up from the dream, exhausted, tears streaming down my face. I rushed downstairs to find Wendy, but she wasn't there, so I called her. Where are you? Wendy hesitated. I'm in a garden. I'd never heard of Wendy visiting any garden, but suddenly it hit me. It must be the flower field from my dream. I drove straight there and, sure enough, amidst the peach pinks and buttery yellows, I saw her tall, slender figure. Her eyes looked dazed, like she'd just awakened from a dream. When she saw me, she reached out her hand, not shocked at all. Brother, I just dreamed of you again. There was fear still lingering in her eyes, like she hadn't fully woken. In the dream, I stayed here with you all my life. I don't ever want to dream that again. I put my hand in hers, letting her hold it, tears falling again. Did you plant this flower field? She blushed and nodded. For what? For someone I like to see. Did the person you like see it? Wendy looked at me deeply, took a step forward, and leaned into my arms. He saw. He's right here by my side. Her eyes held a determined look with a trace of unease. But I don't know if he likes me. I do. I nodded fiercely. I do. Looking at her beautiful face, her eyes filled with disbelief and joy, she hugged me cautiously, as if afraid to hurt me. This careful woman, she took on vengeful anger for me, toppled her family for revenge. In 2 lifetimes, how could I not love her? Wendy, I'm divorced from Tina. I leaned into her with a quiet voice. I heard her heartbeat quicken, and she tightened her arm, pulling me closer. Brother, can I? You can. I nodded firmly. In the next second, she tilted her head and kissed my lips. Surrounded by a sea of floral fragrances, in a dazzling array of colors, we kissed with abandon. The previous life finally seemed completely over.